Hello everyone. Today we'll be discussing anti-defection law. This will be the last topic in our chapter on Parliament. Before we move on to anti-defection law and the provisions which are entailed in the Constitution, obviously we have heard of this term and we ignored this term twice. Once when we were studying schedules, I told you very clearly that once we are dealing with the chapter on Parliament, we'll study the 10th schedule. And secondly, when we were discussing the disqualifications of members of Parliament under Article 102, I said that we'll be studying the second kind of disqualification under Clause 2 when we deal with the topic of defection. So here we are on ADL. So obviously our first question should be, what is the meaning of this word defection? Defection simply means disloyalty to a group or a faction. Ideally, when any member of a political party leaves his original party and joins any other political party, this should be termed as defection. However, defection is applicable only to this category, that is the legislators. Legislators entail MPs, MLAs, MLCs. In the newspapers, you will find very common terms such as horse trading. This is a term used in our country, a very popular term. Whenever any politician switches sides, switches loyalties, we call this as horse trading, or crossing the floor, a term which is more commonly used in UK. And again, something called carpet crossing, a term which is found in Nigeria. Also, of late, we have been witnessing a new nomenclature for defection: political migrations, a very convenient word. Now, the larger question involved here is, why do we feel there's a problem with defection? Say you belong to a political party, or you had a certain ideology and you join a political party. Now, eventually you may grow out of that ideology, you may have a change of heart, change of opinion based on certain facts, based on things you read, and you are within your right to obviously switch sides. But why do we have a problem with switching sides? The problem is not with switching sides, but the intention behind the switch, and that is what has to be checked. So, what was the need of curbing this defection? Way back in 1967, that is once Indira Gandhi came to power, at the behest and the support of a very senior group of members in the Congress party called the Syndicate. It consisted of all the senior members of the party, Kamaraj and Morarji Desai and such people. But there was a conflict. Congress party could not hold power for long in various states. A lot of defections were seen, people switching sides. So much so that in a phase of 4 years, we saw 142 defections in the parliament, around 2,000 defections in state assemblies, which resulted in the collapse of 32 governments. This means that defection can cause something called instability in the government. Also, we saw 200 plus defectors being rewarded with some sort of ministerial position, being made ministers of various portfolios. This also means that defection can also result in something called an increased level of corruption. Obviously, not to forget the great chap Gayalal. This person, Gayalal, he switched sides thrice within a period of 15 days. In fact, he from Congress moved to the United Front, then came back to Congress. And when he came back to Congress, the member of Congress, Birendra Singh, brought him to the press meet where all the newspapers were present, or the members of these newspapers and dailies were present, and he declared that Gayaram ab aa gaya hai, has returned back. However, in the same evening, Gayalal went back to the United Front, and thus the term Ayaram Gayaram came into being. This is the gentleman Gayalal, the very famous person. So now we understand that there was a need for some kind of law or provision to prevent such defections. But what exactly is the implication of defection? The implications can be of four kinds. The very first implication is that it results in instability of the government. We have seen this collapse of 32 governments, obviously. Secondly, the increased level of corruption. We saw that again, where a lot of people were given ministerial posts, which we see even today. Breach of public trust. Now, how does this happen? Say, for example, in today's scenario, Rahul Gandhi, who is an MP from Wayanad. Now, people of Wayanad voted for Rahul Gandhi. Let us assume voted for Rahul Gandhi because they did not want a BJP MP to win. So they voted not more for Rahul Gandhi but against BJP. Assuming that if Rahul Gandhi today chooses to join BJP, don't you think this would be a violation of the trust or the mandate of the electorate, the people who have voted for Rahul Gandhi? So that is how trust of the public can be breached when you switch sides. And the fourth and the most interesting aspect is that it threatens the sustenance of political parties. How does it threaten the sustenance of political parties? See, way back in 1992, we'll be discussing it very shortly. There was a very interesting case called the Quijotto-Holohan case. You will find it later on. We'll discuss some of the provisions of this judgment of Quijotto-Holohan in 1992, where Supreme Court very clearly said, especially the Justice Venkatacharya, he said that a political party functions on the strength of shared beliefs. Any freedom of its members to vote as they please or switch sides can embarrass the public image of the political party. And not just the image, but the popularity and the confidence that the public has on the political party also is undermined. That is why once the public opinion goes against the party, it can threaten the sustenance and in fact the very survival of the political parties, because political parties cannot be reduced to mere informal groups. So these are the four implications of defection. Now obviously, once you are through with the implications, you'll have to understand that this was a major issue and the government did take some steps during those times. In fact, way back in 1967-68, a committee was formed, a parliamentary committee, which resulted in the formation of a separate committee called Yashwant Chauhan Committee. Earliest efforts to curbing defection, we had the YB Chauhan Committee, which was a result of this committee on defections. This YB Chauhan Committee, which was formed in 1969, it described defection as a national malady, which was eating into, as you see, the very vitals of our democracy. However, no concrete step could be taken in this regard. Again, with two amendment bills in 1973-1978, the government did try to take certain steps to curb defection, but both these efforts failed. In 1979, just a fact, West Bengal became the first state to put in place an anti-defection law. In fact, this was a question asked way back in 1994 in one prelims examination. The anti-defection law was enacted as early as 1979 in which state? So the answer was West Bengal. So some steps were taken to curb defection. Now let us just understand through these diagrams as to how defection creates very serious consequences and implications. Let us take an example of the Maharashtra assembly elections which happened last year. BJP and Shiv Sena, these two parties had joined hands, signed a pre-poll coalition. Total 288 seats. This means that we need an absolute majority, 145 seats to form the government. BJP and Shiv Sena did win the required number of seats. They were supposed to form the government. There was some conflict between the parties as to who should become the chief minister and for how much period. And the result was that now Shiv Sena joined hands with other parties to form the government. Now, this is a very strange scenario because parties with different ideologies have come together to form the government. In any situation, if there's any conflict between Congress and Shiv Sena, Congress can withdraw its support, take back the support, and the government can collapse. So there are multiple parties on which the formation of a stable government depends. This is one serious issue with respect to defection. Also, you have to understand at the same point here, how is the public trust breached? Though it is a provision which is not related to anti-defection laws, but all those people who voted for Shiv Sena, there would have been some people who would have voted for Shiv Sena only because they believe that by voting for Shiv Sena, they would actually be helping in formation of a NDA government in Maharashtra. But later on, Shiv Sena formed government with some other parties. This also resulted in a breach of mandate of people. So the entire result is that you will have to face this kind of unstable government because of the aspirations of various parties. Obviously, corruption is what becomes a result for some MPs and MLAs. This is the statement which I was just referring to a while back when Supreme Court in the Kyoto Hall 1 case mentioned this while stating the importance of a political party. So, once certain efforts in regard to bringing any kind of law for defection failed initially, however, in 1985, a 10th schedule was added to the constitution. I'm sure you are aware that a 10th schedule was already there way back in 1974. This 10th schedule related with respect to the Sikkim being an associate state of India. However, this 10th schedule was removed the very next year when Sikkim became a full-fledged state and Indian constitution got back to 9 schedules. Through the 52nd Amendment Act of 1985, a 10th schedule was added again and 2 articles, 102 clause 2 for the parliament and 191 clause 2 for the state assemblies was also inserted. These 2 articles contain the provisions with respect to 10th schedule, and that is the defection. And the heading of 10th schedule is this: provisions as to disqualification on grounds of defection, which is popularly known as the anti-defection law, or hereby we'll refer to as the ADL. Interestingly, the statement of object and reason, see, this is something which every bill, once it becomes an act, or even before that, once it's tabled in the parliament, every bill has to have some kind of object and reason. So the object and reason of this bill was very clear. It talked about the defection, political defection, being a matter of national concern, and it would undermine the very foundation of democracy if it is not curbed or nipped in the bud. So by 1985, we had something called the 10th schedule through the 52nd Amendment Act. Also inserted were 2 other articles, and now we'll see the provisions with respect to the 10th schedule. Before we come to that, there were 2 questions asked with respect to 10th schedule, once in 1998, second in 2014. I would like you to pause the video at this point of time and solve these 2 questions, this question quickly. So, which one of the following schedules of the Constitution of India contains provisions regarding anti-defection? Obviously, the answer is 10th schedule, a very difficult question, right? Considering the UPSC standard. No, I mean, this is a really easy question. And we will have certain questions which are of this nature, but let's not get affected by this question because these questions are far few and far in between. Anyway, let us now come to the 2 articles that were added and see the content of these 2 articles. Article 102 clause 2 talks about the House of the Parliament. That means it is related to the MPs of Rajya Sabha and Lok Sabha. So any person who is disqualified under 10th schedule will also be disqualified from being a member of the parliament. This means once you are disqualified under certain provisions of the 10th schedule, you cease to be the member of the parliament. Secondly, Article 191 clause 2, the exact same article relates to the states where it is applicable to both MLAs and MLCs, just like for Rajya Sabha and Lok Sabha. So let us see now the provisions with respect to disqualification and others such things. The schedule contains 8 sections. They are classified into 4 categories, and we have to be very, very aware that the ADL applies to MPs of Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha, the Legislative Assembly, that is the MLAs, and also the MLCs if the state has one. There are 6 states which have MLCs. Let us see the disqualification provisions. Before we see these provisions, understand that we'll be referring to 3 different kinds of members. First are members who belong to a political party. Say Amit Shah, Narendra Modi, Rahul Gandhi, Sonia Gandhi. These are members of different political parties. If any member of a political party, after winning elections, that means once he has become a member of the House, he resigns from his party. Firstly, once he resigns from his political party, or secondly, given up his membership of not the House but the party. Secondly, if he votes or abstains from voting in the House. Let us briefly understand this provision. Say, for example, there is a bill, the Constitutional Amendment Bill in the Parliament. BJP wants its MPs to vote in favor of the bill. Yes, this is what BJP wants. Congress wants all its MPs to vote against the bill. This is what Congress wants. Now, BJP will issue a directive known as whip to all its party members to be present on that given date, and not just be present but also vote in favor of the bill, or whatever the situation or whatever the whip contains, either yes or no. So you have to vote in favor of what the party high command asks you, irrespective of what opinion you hold of the bill. Similarly, Congress would also do the same thing, issue a directive or a whip to all its party members, and all the people who are present on that day, they have to be present on that day of voting and will be voting in the direction of the party guidelines. If any BJP MP is, number one, not present, firstly, or he votes against the party diktat. So if he votes against or abstains from voting, does not vote, in that case he is given a time period of 15 days to explain the reason for such behavior. And if the party forgives, condones such behavior within the 15-day period, then no step will be taken. Otherwise, the party will report to the authorized person that such member should be disqualified under the provisions of 10th schedule because the person has not followed the mandate of the party. So herein 15 days of time is given to the particular person to explain his situation as to why he did not come on that day or why he voted against the party's whip. So this is first provision with respect to disqualification. Second provision, in case we are dealing with the second category of people who are called the nominated members. These currently are the ones who belong to Rajya Sabha, 12 in number, under Article 80. We have discussed this before. Under Article 80, the President is empowered to nominate 12 people from the fields of art, science, social service and literature. Obviously, that empowering the article to empower the President comes under also Article 74. This means that if the President is nominating these 12 people, this nomination is done on the advice, that is the binding advice of the Council of Ministers. However, so these 12 people are nominated by the President from various fields. Now, these people ideally do not belong to any political party, but these people are given 6 months time to join any political party which they deem fit. He may join a party within 6 months of taking a seat. Once the 6 months period expires, people who are nominated will not be allowed to join any political party. You have 12 nominated members currently. Mary Com is one member, Dr. Subramanian Swamy is another member, Sonal Mansingh, I'm sure you are aware who Dr. Sonal Mansingh is, right? Dr. Sonal Mansingh is a very famous Indian classical dancer. So such people are given a time of 6 months. You will see that they can join any party they feel like, which is not the case with the previous one, where the members belonging to a political party could not give up the membership of their party. In this case, the people here can join any party they feel fit, but the time frame is 6 months. So this is a second category where if you do that, if you try to join any political party after the expiry of 6 months, you will be disqualified. And the third category is for independent members. All such members who do not belong to any party or who have contested elections independent of any party will not be allowed to join any party once they win the elections. You can vote in favor of any party you want during the voting taking place in the house, but you cannot join any party officially. If you join any party, you will be disqualified. So these are the provisions with respect to disqualifications. Now we'll see certain exemptions under the 10th schedule. The very first exemption is for the post of speakers and deputy speakers of Lok Sabha, deputy chairman of the Rajya Sabha, speakers and deputy speakers of the assemblies, and chairman and deputy chairman of the state legislative councils. The chairman of Rajya Sabha, who is the vice president, is not the member of the house, and that is why this is not applicable to him automatically. This 10th schedule is only applicable to legislators, and vice president is not a legislator. His name is not found here. So all the presiding officers and their deputies are exempted from disqualification if and only if once they get elected as a presiding officer and they choose to resign from their party, they should not join any party or their original party till the time they hold office. Say for example, in 2019, we had Om Birla, who became the Speaker of Lok Sabha. Suppose Om Birla feels that just to maintain the independence of the post of Speaker so that the other members of other parties don't feel that he's biased towards BJP, he chooses to resign from BJP. Ideally, any other member of BJP, if he resigns from his party, he stands disqualified. But this kind of provision does not apply to the Speaker. If Om Birla chooses to resign from his party, he will not be disqualified, but he should not join his party again or any other party till the time he holds this post. If they try to join their original party or try to join some other party, they will be disqualified, right, till the time they hold the post. So this is an exemption with respect to the presiding officers. This exemption is solely for the purpose of ensuring the independence of the post of Speaker. While we were discussing the presiding officers, the topic Speaker, I did mention certain points as to why do we have the need to ensure the independence of Speaker and what are the provisions in the Constitution and otherwise to ensure that the Speaker remains independent. So independence of the Speaker is important, and that is why he is exempted. There are certain other exemptions. The original act or the original provision contained that if suppose there's a party with 90 members, 90 MPs, if 1/3 of these members choose to split and form another party, then they will not be disqualified. In short, retail defection is not allowed. An individual cannot leave his party, but group, that is something called wholesale defection, that is allowed. When as a group, if say 30 people left the party together, they would not be incurring disqualification. However, this particular aspect was removed in 2003 through the 91st Amendment Act. But an addition was made with the same Amendment Act that if 2/3, from 1/3 it is made 2/3, if 2/3 members of any party decide to merge with some other party or form an independent party, they will not be disqualified. So if 2/3 of the members decide to merge with another political party, they will not be disqualified. And all the members, the remaining members who do not accept the merger, they can continue to function as a separate group and they will also not be disqualified, obviously. So the 1/3 provision has been changed to 2/3 now. This is the exemption. Now, who decides? If you remember a couple of slides back, we saw that when any member of a party votes against the party whip or the party directive or the party guideline, then the party has to take a decision within 15 days. And if the particular act is not condoned or forgiven, then the party can complain to the authorized person. The authorized person, in case, or the deciding authority, in case, is the chairman or the speaker, that is the presiding officer of the house. He is the deciding authority. Interestingly, the original law also claimed that decisions will be final and validity of the proceedings cannot be questioned in any court. This means that whatever decision the presiding officer takes could not be challenged in any court of law. However, the very famous Kyoto-Holguin case, we did see this case, the statements a couple of slides back. In this case, Supreme Court said that such decisions of the presiding officers were open to judicial review in case of violation of the constitutional mandates, malafides, that is the dishonest intentions, or non-compliance of rules of natural justice, or perversity. Say if it is found that there is sufficient situation or sufficient condition that the presiding officer has taken a decision in favor of say the ruling party, or is trying to unduly favor the any political party and is taking a decision which clearly on the face of it seems to be dishonest or unreasonable or unacceptable. That is the meaning of perverse, something which is unreasonable or unacceptable behavior. Then such decisions are open to judicial review. And this is a very interesting aspect. I'll tell you why. Because what can happen is, say a particular person votes in favor of the ruling party. Say today Rahul Gandhi votes in favor of BJP. Now the Congress party will say that Rahul Gandhi has voted in favor of BJP and they will submit to the speaker Om Birla. So please accept this complaint. Under 10th schedule, this person should be disqualified. Now Om Birla will say that my decision is final. I will not disqualify him. Right? And if this particular decision is taken and if the original provision held, then this could not be challenged in the court. However, Supreme Court has struck this provision down and said that now this can be challenged, and all matters of disputes with respect to MPs and MLAs can be challenged in the High Court, which is the original jurisdiction of the High Court. And then we'll go to Supreme Court. So that is the reason deciding authority is the chairman or the speaker, but their decisions can be challenged in the court of law. Fourth category was again courts were barred from having jurisdiction over any matters with respect to anti-defection law. The court in the same case, Supreme Court in the same case, struck this provision down, stating that this cannot happen. Why can this not happen? The court said that when you are trying to take away judicial review from the judiciary, that means you are trying to affect even the powers of the high courts. And any kind of reduction in the jurisdiction of Supreme Court and high courts requires ratification of such a bill by more than 50% of the states. If you remember, there are certain kinds of constitutional amendments which require ratification of more than 50% of the states after the parliament has passed the bill with special majority. Since this bill was simply passed with special majority and states were not sought, the opinion of states was not sought, that is why Supreme Court said that this particular clause will not hold ground, and this clause was struck. And that is why the previous clause was also struck, and Supreme Court said that whenever speaker takes a decision, such a decision can always be challenged in the court of law. So these are the provisions with respect to the disqualification and exemption and also the deciding authority. Now, through the 91st Amendment Act of 2003, as we have seen earlier, exemptions were added. The 1/3 split was modified to 2/3 merger. Also, a couple of articles were also added in the Constitution. Firstly, was 75 1B and 164 1B. The clause 1B was added to each of them. It stated that any person, firstly, I think we are all aware that any person can be a minister without being a member of the House. As you have, I'm sure, seen the movie Nayak. There, Anil Kapoor was made the chief minister for a single day. That provision is possible. It is mentioned very clearly in Article 75 and 164 that any person can be a minister for a maximum period of 6 months without being a member of either house. However, once a person is disqualified under 10th schedule, he cannot be a minister until he gets re-elected. Why the provision of re-election? So that he seeks the mandate of people again, because what he has done is breached the mandate of people. If he goes back to people and seeks the votes based on his new ideas and new philosophy or new ideology, and people vote him back, then he's within his right to join or become a minister. Or secondly, the term of the house comes to an end. The term of house is ideally 5 years, or the term of his office comes to an end. So if he's a minister, the term of office is usually 5 years. And if suppose someone became an MP in 2014 from Congress, in 2018 he joins BJP, he cannot be made a minister. He'll have to wait till 2019. And then once the tenure of the particular ministership comes to an end, even without winning elections, he can still be made a minister, but that will be only for 6 months. So this was the change made, and similarly for MLAs, MLCs in 164 1B. Also, another change was made in Article 361B. All such people who are disqualified under Schedule 10 would not be allowed to hold any public remunerative post till they get elected. This was added through a separate article called 361B. See, these two are clauses under Article 75 and 164, while 361B is an independent article in itself. So this is all about the provisions with respect to anti-defection law. In the next video, we will be dealing with the issues concerning the provisions. Thank you.